welcome to FUT Ballerz. I'm your host, Hunter. We gave the other three guys a week off this week. We're going to be discussing all things Team of the Year, just in a brief summary, and we're going to be going over what we look forward to doing next, specifically within the Patreon for you guys, and new tactics, meta styles, meta formations, and not too bad of a Team of the Week this week with some slightly usable cards, better than usual. And we've also looking forward to the Future Stars promo. So first of all, I want to invite Matt to come on and tell us, how was your weekend league? Did you play? How are you enjoying FIFA?
Thanks for having me on, Hunter. I've been enjoying playing, but I didn't play weekend league this last weekend just gone. Reason being as I promised myself that I would reevaluate my best team following Team of the Year, hopefully with at least one or two additions from said team, and I dabbled with one, didn't go so well, so I'm kind of back to square one, but I think I'm getting a little bit itchy for some weekend league playing time, so I'll probably be back in this coming weekend.
Very good. Wise, how was your weekend league, my friend?
I'm doing well. My weekend was actually quite enjoyable. I have taken a little bit of a hiatus from playing weekend league, so I just sat back and dallied on the market a little. So
how's that different to playing weekend league, sitting back? That's what
Steve, I haven't brought you in yet. Just
sorry.
Be quiet.
Okay. Sorry, Dad.
I'm hosting.
Yep.
No,
it's
right.
my show.
So as you can tell by the big smile on my face, I'm really enjoying life without having to played weekend league recently. But we'll get into some things I'm hoping to accomplish a little bit later.
Right. Okay. Well, since Steve couldn't wait to be introduced, we'll go ahead and bring him in now. Steve, how are you?
I'm good, Hunter. Happy to wreck the podcast.
Wreck it, you have done. Did you play weekend league this weekend?
I did. I played to Silver 1 on the Road to Glory account just to keep it ticking over, get some coins in. Pretty low coin balance there at the moment, so it was necessary. It wasn't that bad, actually. I quite enjoyed it. I didn't start playing till Sunday, so that's why I stopped at Silver 1, really. But yeah, it was pretty enjoyable, pretty good fun.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I had to get 4 more wins for weekend league to get the 2 ultimate packs from swaps, which I did, and they were really bad. I mean, really bad. 2 ultimate packs. I think I had 184 out of 2 ultimate packs. I think we actually streamed those, but if you were there, you know what I'm talking about. It was particularly bad. None of my packs were good for Team of the Year, but that's another discussion. What did you guys think of Team of the Year? Wise, we'll start with you. What did you think of the promo as a whole?
For sure. As I'm a fortunate individual that I could choose, half the team if I wanted to, not all at once. I could pick one player from half the team and include him in the squad eventually. But besides that, I had saved up quite a few packs, did a pack opening, got good fodder, but none of those purple flares like we were all hoping for. So that part was always enjoyable. But besides that, I didn't do many of the SBCs, and I'd have to say because of that as a whole, it really didn't do much for me. So I'd give it a 3 out of 10 if we're doing a grading scale.
3 out of
10. Yeah.
Gosh.
All right. 3 out of 10 is pretty low, but I mean, honestly though, this promo isn't really for us, right? I mean, this promo is for the 1%ers. I mean, it's for the streamers, it's for the content creators. It's a money grab in my opinion for EA, right? They promote it, they pump it, and even on an ultimate pack, you still have less than 1% chance. And judging by some of the content that I was watching over the weekend and during the week, some of these guys had hundreds of packs saved up. I think Matt Foot Trading had 1,000 packs saved up, and he got 2 Team of the Years. 2.
Yep.
2 in 1,000 packs. So
500 to 1 chance.
Yeah, I mean, you're literally talking about a 0.01% chance that you're going to pack one of these. So it's not our promo. The good thing is we have the byproducts like we talked about last week, right? We got the Rooneys, the CR7, the Ribéry, the Boateng. I mean, those are some valuable cards, and they're obtainable. Grealish, that's a free card. All you have to do is devote some of your time. And Steve had some pretty good things to say about him when I spoke with him about Grealish. But speaking of SBC cards, Steve, what did you think of the CR7 card, the flashback?
It's a card that I've done. It's a card that I've done a full review of in the FUT Academy Patreon. So I don't really want to give too much away. Play my cards slightly close to my chest. It's a interesting idea, I guess. It's very much. It's obviously CR7 light, isn't it? It's a pale imitation of the actual gold card, but it does have the same animations that the gold card has. It definitely has some characteristics. If you want to know though whether or not it's worth spending your coins on, you're going to have to check out the FUT Academy Patreon, I'm afraid.
I'll tease out. I'll see if I can tease out a little bit more information for the noobs out there. I saw a lot of people on the Twitter timeline, social media. How did you feel his body type played with that increased speed and dribbling in a sense? That's it. Just tease us a little bit more.
It felt nice on the ball. It felt a lot like I could convince myself that I was using the real CR7 when he was dribbling. Okay. I can certainly say that much. One of the areas where I was quite disappointed was with his aerial ability. That just didn't seem to be the same. But you know, I've got his stats up on the screen at the moment. So far, I've played 12 games with him, 15 goals and 6 assists. So the output's there. But whether or not he's worth it, that's another question.
I must see it's 250, 300k ish, right?
It was about 300k on PlayStation last time I looked.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Not cheap.
And that was probably before the Rooney SPC that came out yesterday, right? Which I did that one right away just because I remember the Rooney of old, the FIFA 14, 13 style Roonies that, toward the end of the game, he would have these really overpowered cards. Really fun card to use. He moves very well. They upped his work rate. The attacking work rate is high. And they gave him a 4-star skills, 4-star weak foot. That's an upgrade on his normal card as well. Really strong though. That's the one thing I can say about him. Matt is going to love Rooney if he ever does that SBC. But he has the pace to go along with it. He can hold the ball well. He holds it up. He lets guys get up front, get up forward, and get the attack going. But he's got a rocket for a shot. I mean, just buries it. The only thing that I've only used him obviously for a day, but the only concern I have with him so far, and it could be just an anomaly, but it seems like his weak foot is really weak for some reason. I was testing both of them out, and it was a noticeable difference on that 4-star weak foot, which I haven't really felt that with any other player before. So
I've heard it said recently, actually, talking about weak foot, Hunter, or weak feet, that there seems to be an idea going around the FIFA community that the weak foot is only important outside the box, that it doesn't really matter that much inside the box. I'd just like to quash that myth immediately. It's a load of...
I would agree, because all the issues that I had with it using the weak foot with Rooney were inside the box and relatively close to goal too. So I mean, it was just the velocity was the biggest difference that I noticed. The accuracy was just fine, but it was the speed of the shot was off on the weak foot for sure.
Interesting.
Matt, how did you find Team of the Year?
Personally disappointing. I'm not going to grade it on how I think it's going to impact on the wider community. It's for everyone to sort of pick the bones out of it and see what they make of it themselves. And as we've said many times, it is a rich man's promo, so it's not going to touch upon enough people to be a truly community-driven event. For myself personally, I identified the right side of my main team as an area of concern, so I had my eye on Trent from the get-go and maybe one other player, so likely a right winger to go with that. But I did buy Trent. I got him at a very good price. I kind of figured early on that the price would slowly rise, and it did, so I got him for about 900k right at the beginning, and slotted him into my main team and just was thoroughly unimpressed. He didn't seem quick enough to be a threat going forward, and certainly not quick enough to cope with the very fastest attacking wide players either. So that kind of renders him more of a central line player, which was not the intention that I bought him for. So I ended up selling him for quite a bit of profit after about a week, and went back to using Kleiber at right back, and that kind of dictates a sort of Dutch right side of my team now, which is actually working really fine. So it's worked out quite well, and I've put some money back into my club. So I guess what I could say is my summary for Team of the Year is I ended up with a few SBC cards. So I did Dybala, I did
Nice.
Cristiano, and all of the Player of the Month cards that were available at the time, because I needed something to put fodder into. And pretty much broke even coin-wise. So I got nothing with all the save packs that I had. I had 145, good standard of pack, not like plus 75 one-player packs. Really good stuff, and didn't really get anything of note other than a couple of Team of the Week players. So that was disappointing. So on the whole thing's a bit flat. I'm kind of glad it's going to be over soon, and I'm looking forward to future stars more, and I've got plenty of coin to sink into that if something comes up that tickles my fancy.
Well said, sir. Yeah, it's like we said before. Team of the Year is to me, it's a false promo. It's just there to get the hype, because no one really can relate to it except for the fortunate few. So one thing it did give us, though, was like we said, these SBC cards and all of these extra cards, which has got the market into a frenzy. Actually, the last few days, the market has gone up quite a bit, and I was talking to Wise before we started the recording about some of these prices. I mean, like 83s and 84s are still relatively elevated as we're recording this Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. UK. Wise, give us some wise words.
Beautiful, Hunter. Yeah, we are definitely on that same wavelength about. This is a promo that usually people, for the past few years, people have assumed Team of the Year, market crash, everything goes to shit. And if you look at some of the trends over the past week, this week, and even last year, you notice that that's not always the case. There are definitely some moments in this past week where we saw, when the lightning rounds were popular, that the market did dip, just given the enormity of supply. But one of the things that the EA community or the FIFA community was clamoring about on social medias were like, oh, they didn't give us enough lightning rounds, or all these packs sold out so quick. Like, how was I actually supposed to try to buy, packs to get these Team of the Years, which is hilarious, because usually the FIFA community were out there like, EA's just money grabbing. Like we said, like EA's money grabbing. They only care about money. And I just thought that was an interesting little digression there. But it was bringing it back to the fodder. This year in particular, that Ribery SBC, incredibly expensive. It has its market, and people are able to grind it, if you will, but those are the same individuals that will grind icon level SBCs. But Dybala, Boateng, Rooney, even now, those are actually pretty affordable SBCs. So I think we saw a lot of people, instead of trying to open packs, or instead of having incredibly overpriced SBCs, that has allowed that middle tier of fodder, so those 83, 84, 85s, and 86s, to stay higher. There weren't that many other coin suck SBCs. I know we got a lot of upgrade packs that people were interested in and intrigued in, but as a whole, people were keeping their coins this year, I think, more than any other years. And that's why I think we've seen some of this market explosion, because they still have the capital to deploy in these other meta cards, if you will. So your likes of your high level icons, high level golds, as well as these SBCs and the fodder that comes with it. And looking forward, we have another promo, this FUT Future Stars promo, with the loading screen is up for those out there at this point, that is going to also entail, most likely, more SBCs and more desirable SBCs in that middling range. If I had to give some predictions, in those squads that require 83 in form, 84 in form, maybe 85 in form. And so with that in mind, I could see this fodder staying elevated, because, we already had the big supply of what should have brought it down in Team of the Year, and it hasn't. So looking forward, I can see fodder staying high. So where else are we going to look? Steve's always asking, where should we put our money in our market? And I can't do an English accent, so I'll work on that one for the future. But a little tidbit, a little nifty area of the market I like to see. If you have a couple weeks for an investment horizon, I like some of these, what I'll call discard price man of the matches. So those orange cards, like Federico Chiesa, take him for an example. On Xbox, these cards discard for more than Inform, so they discard for like 14, 15K. He only goes for like 16. So you're picking up, there are some good low risk investments that you can deploy some of this capital that you might have thought, I wanted to put it into these other SBCs. Well, put it into some of these discard man of the matches. I like this little area. And in a couple weeks and even a month later, I think we'll see those have a nice bit of return for you guys.
Why would their value increase? What would cause man of the matches to go up?
Excellent question. So one, I think, so we got a lot of these. So what they came out last Friday. So they usually come out on Fridays, and they're domestic cup performances. But what they do is they're usually lower rated, but still high impact cards. Like, so this, keep harping on this Chiesa. He's only 82. So for all of these upcoming objectives where you might have to go into these friendlies where there's lower caps on max overalls, they'd be really useful there because they pack a punch. But also they're a card that when they do become, people forget that eventually man of the matches are able to be submitted instead of team of the weeks as a special card in these SBCs. So that's one where keep that in mind too. They start as we go on to kind of keep the team of the week market from just being incredibly inflated. They allow you to submit man of the matches, one to watches, and we'll get into that later, but those type of cards as well. And so I there's some good appreciation over a couple weeks on some of these orange cards, especially in desirable leagues. Of course, try to keep it to the big 5 leagues.
Matt, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I was just saying I've actually picked up a few Chiesas, totally unprompted from what Wise was just saying. But I recognise that there's going to come a time when people are struggling to link their Dyballas and Ronaldos that they've done for SBCs to good Juventus cards. Despite Juventus being such a massive club, they don't actually have that many really good cards for FUT. But Chiesa could be one, on a lower rated level. So as more and more people have acquired these cards, they're experimenting with some team building. That could be a card that people could reach to, and that easily then links via nationality to players like Insigne and things like that. So Wise made very good points about them being useful for SBCs down the line, but for some very lightweight squad building, I think there could also be a route through there that could slowly see that increase in value as well. Maybe not astronomical, but if you want a low risk investment where you're going to pretty much guaranteed to make a few K in the long run, and you could still get a useful card in the meantime, and it would be a good one to look at. There's also quite a few Premier League cards there, a lot being English as well. So if you're tackling something like the recent Grealish objective, and you need some English Premier League cards, or later on you might need something of lower rating, those could be good ones to look at as well. And as far as a card like Mason Greenwood, Tammy Abraham goes, they haven't really looked like getting any special cards this season, unfortunately, because they're sort of in and out of the team. So if you're diehard fans of those respective players' clubs, this might be the only way you're going to get a special card of those this season based off current form.
Oh, excellent point.
Good stuff. You heard it here, folks. Save your orange cards. All of them. All right. So speaking of squad building, we want to talk about the way you structure your squad. Why do people structure squads the way they do? And a lot of it revolves around the meta, right? The most effective tactic available. Steve loves that term.
For some people.
So for some people, correct. There's meta, and then there's Matt meta. We'll get into Matt meta here shortly. But right now, I want to hear from Steve on this topic. What makes the meta, and why does it seem like it changes year to year with each FIFA, and oftentimes it changes within each FIFA title 2 or 3 times?
It tends to develop quite organically, I think. Normally, it's just a case of people playing the game a lot and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. Generally speaking, a YouTuber somewhere will get wind of it, they'll make a video about it, and before you know it, every Tom, Dick and Harry is playing the same way. That's the way it tends to evolve. There are always slight imbalances in the game, and in any FIFA there's always something. We're actually entering a phase of the game post Team of the Year where broken mechanics often tend to come to the surface when we get these really high rated cards coming into teams. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if we see a few new twists on what's currently going on with the meta. Obviously, the thing that everybody's talking about right now is the 5-3-2, because Dullen Mike absolutely destroyed somebody last weekend in the FGS with it. So that's very much the current zeitgeist. But it'll change. I mean, it's another situation really where FIFA replicates real world football. Formations, tactics, they come and go. It's really quite often just a matter of fashion. I've spent the afternoon actually playing against the 5-3-2 specifically. I've spent a full afternoon trying out different formations. There's one in particular that I like. There's one in particular that I think absolutely wrecks it, to be quite honest with you. So an anti-meta, yeah, pretty much. I don't think it would ever become a meta itself, because a lot of other systems would defeat it quite easily, but it's very effective against the 5-3-2. And I think once people start deploying this against it, I don't think the 5-3-2 meta will be around for very long. And another plug for the FUT Academy, there'll be a full guide to this mystery tactic and formation in there very soon, probably by the time that this video pod is released.
Oh, so you're not even going to tell us what it is?
I am not.
Oh.
We'll talk about it next week.
Saucy.
Okay, well let's wrap it up. I'm just kidding. Wise, what do you think? What do you think about the meta?
Yeah, so admittedly I've taken a couple weekend league breaks from this. What does that encompass? 10 days, if you will, from FIFA. But it is interesting to see on my level. Okay, well, meta impacts the market, so you got to think, okay, that's how it impacts what I'm focused on in the game. But you always see it be pacey players that have good dribbling, because people feel like the things that you can make up for the most in game are shooting or passing. So that I haven't seen the meta not be agile 5-star weak foot players like that since FIFA maybe 17 or something, when we had that brief period where headers were incredibly OP. So I think a lot of meta stems from the way that EA are trying to drive their game, if you will. And if you think back to, okay, well, what are the main things they promote on a FIFA 20 demo or the FIFA 20 trailers? It's usually like, oh, we've tweaked this dribbling aspect, and we've done this with how you can control your players' skill moves. So I think that's where you see a lot of emphasis put on game developers in terms of their new segments they want to bring to the game, which happen to harken to be around dribbling mostly, and if so facto then pace and their agility and balance and all those things that come into play in dribbling. So that's my 2 cents of where I think this meta is developed from, if you will, and why I don't think it'll change for a little while.
Speaking of meta, before this last patch, I was in was doing a private stream in the FUT Academy Lockdown Lounge, and
we don't want to know about your private streams, Hunter. Keep
yeah,
kind of thing
so
to
we're
yourself.
definitely going to talk about it. Buddy.
Someone throw up an NSFW.
I was doing a private stream for Steve in the Lockdown Lounge.
Oh, indeed you were, Hunter.
And it got super sweaty.
Oh my gosh! Wow. This is just as bad as a pot noodle discussion. All right, sorry.
So Steve, we were trying to test out whether or not something would work for an objective and whatnot. But after we completed the objective, Steve started doing keepy ups, and he continued to do keepy ups
just to trigger Hunter.
I was triggered right away. I said, "This son of a bitch." There's no way I'm going to concede one of these. And I didn't. I think we would. Like, we played, from like the 15th to halftime, and he tried and he tried, and I just kept doing what he said. Don't defend with your defender. Use your striker. Chase him down, get in front of him, and eventually he will take the ball away, which I don't think we should have to worry about that now. I haven't played the game since the patch, but we'll see what happens.
The patch doesn't seem to have actually changed that much, to be honest with you. I've messed around a bit with the bridge dribble, and it's still there. It's still pretty strong.
Yeah, that one's.
I'm not sure. Not sure what they've patched, really. To be honest with you, it doesn't seem to have changed much at all.
Yeah, but didn't you have the auto jockey movement turned to manual, right?
Briefly, and then I turned it back.
So you tried it on both.
Yep.
And you didn't notice a change?
But it doesn't seem to glitch the defender out as much as it did, which is what I think that we're trying to tune.
Yeah, I think that.
But
was
I don't think it's made the bridge dribble any less effective. I mean, it's early days. I've only been playing. Like I said, I've had one afternoon playing the game sort of post patch, but that's my first thoughts anyway.
Great. All right. So speaking of meta, we're going to talk about the meta. Matt, tell us about your version of the meta, the Matt meta.
Okay, so before I get into that, and of course this is entirely anecdotal, one of the things I wanted to touch upon about meta, and this has come off the back of a discussion that was had on FUT Weekly, which I overheard through Steve's stream the other night, and they were discussing between Ben and Japes and Steve about why FIFA is different to other competitive games in relation to meta, and why does it seem to change so often. And they made some good points in there, but I think there was some key aspects that they overlooked, which is what I wanted to talk about just now. And personally, I find that meta is often more trendy than an actual changing of what is the best way to play Ultimate Team. If you take the 5-3-2, for example, that's been in there since the beginning of this game, but no one just tried it or tried it long enough or hard enough at a competitive level for it to break through. And then someone sees someone destroy in a big competitive tournament, and suddenly that's meta. It's always been there. Anyone could have done it at any time. So the meta didn't change. A trend changed, and people lean on that because they see someone successful with it and they want to replicate that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just think we get a little bit overly caught up in this meta discussion that it's some sort of evolving thing, and it has a life of its own, and it just morphs into different things every few months. It's not like that at all, unless there's something very distinctively put into a patch that makes it so. But I think we all agree there hasn't been anything truly remarkable at the latest patch. Now, one of the reasons why meta in FIFA in general, Ultimate Team in general, differs from other games is because it's an annual iterative game, whereas some of the games that we're comparing it to, let's say something like Counter-Strike, have been going for nearly 15 years. And so people have developed strategies through years and years of repetition that perhaps were completely ignored in the beginning, and then of course subsequent revisions of the software itself have influenced where the meta goes in those games as well over a much longer period of time. But FIFA is an imbalance game by design straight off the bat. It is a pay to win game with absolutely zero shyness about it. It's 100% pay to win, so there's an imbalance straight away on who can afford the best players. Most of us can't, so that creates a massive imbalance immediately. And then, of course, we willingly ditch a version of the game every 12 months so they can come up with a new one, and in order to justify that new version of the game, they tweak things. Not always massively, but enough for it to feel different. So you can't develop strategies over a very, very, very long period of time, a true evolution of how the game is played, when it changes so often. And then, of course, you add patches onto that, and it becomes even much more short-term than that. And if I give you an example of what I'm talking about, where FIFA is just such a ridiculous thing to compare against anything else, I take it we all played Street Fighter 2 back in the day, either in the arcade or Super Nintendo home version, that kind of thing. There were certain characters in that game that most people would have regarded, let's say, in the first year of that game, as completely unplayable, uncompetitive. I'll give you an example being Zangief, the Russian wrestler. He was very slow, very plodding. He didn't have projectile moves
so
like
good.
fireballs and blah, blah, blah. And people just thought he was terrible and generally steered away from that character. But because people have been playing that game for years, people have developed strategies, and he is now one of the more dangerous characters to play in that game at the competitive level. And we don't get that in FIFA. We don't get to play the game long enough to develop those kind of strategies. And because we're constantly introducing new characters or cards into the game, that changes the balance constantly. So it's really unfair to compare FIFA against anything else. It's a truly unique beast. And it's a constantly changing environment by design. And when we willingly just move on from a game every 12 months, we're never going to truly come up with ingenious new strategies in that particular year's iteration of the game. It's simply not possible. So this is why it comes back down to meta being a trend. You see someone be successful with something that perhaps not everyone else is doing, and everyone just rushes over to change to it. And that's purely, in my opinion, what meta is. Now, there are players, of course, within the game that are much more effective at a competitive level than others, and we've spoken about quite a few of those over many weeks on this podcast. I'm sure other ones do as well. But where I'm going with the map meta, and you guys call it that, I didn't call it map meta, because I'm sure you're going to end up disagreeing with what I'm about to say. But
You just said it, map.
yeah, most people seem to want to build a team that is as fast as possible, particularly with your forward line. And I think in the first few months of the game, that's entirely valid because speed is the biggest differentiator at the highest level in the early phases of the game. But now we're at Team of the Year and onwards, the defences in general, I'm not just talking about Varane, but the fullbacks and whoever partners Varane or Joe Gomez, whoever your guy is at centre-back, they've all sort of caught up in terms of speed and power now, whereby just having a 90-plus pace striker is hardly ever going to get you in behind unless the person you're playing against is a complete idiot. So you
Or they're
need...
really delayed.
What's that?
Or they're extremely delayed.
Or there's, well, okay, well, there's that. But you're looking at extraordinary circumstances for those big pace boosts to pay off at a competitive level now. So if you've built your strike force in particular purely around pace, then you're going to struggle at the high end. If you're trying to get into those upper echelons of weekend league rewards and whatnot, I think you'll find it difficult if you're overly reliant on pace. So this is where I wanted to get your guys' opinion on where we're at with strikers now. Obviously, it's better to have pace than to not have it, but I find that because defences are so much harder to break down and people have improved at the game, particularly at the competitive levels that we all want to play at to get good rewards, that it's more advantageous to have players who are excellent at dribbling, who have very high agility and phenomenal finishing. So I'm talking like your informed Ben Yedders over people like Werner, for example, or similar to that. I personally think if you're good at controlling your players in tight spaces, because you're always going to come back against drop back rats or just people who are just very good at defending in and around their box, that you need that player who can just buy you that half a yard of space to get a clean shot on goal, sometimes even forcing you onto the weak foot. That is far more important than pace. And this is where I'm going with this token map meta, right? That if you're
Said it again.
If you're good at keeping...
It's so self-referential.
You guys call it that.
It tries to play it down.
You guys call it that. But what I'm getting at is that if you're good at holding possession of the ball and around the opponent's box, and you're looking for an opportunity to break them down, then it doesn't matter if your striker has 90 plus pace, because most of the time you're not even going to be using the dash button, right? You need good control, good passing, good L-stick dribbling, which Steve's done an excellent job of sharing with his Patreon followers and the people in Discord in the last few days. So those type of players suddenly become much more valuable because you're at a stalemate for pace now with where defenders are at in the game. So what do you guys think about this? What kind of strikers do you think are best suited for where we're at in this stage of the game now, given how good, how fast, how powerful defenders are, particularly as more and more people now think that there is a meta of playing good fullbacks at centre back, which makes it even harder to get in behind.
That's something that one of the Patreons actually submitted in our FUT questions, and we'll cover that in conjunction with what you just said there, Matt. T-Man02139 was asking, if you're doing a FUT bin filter search for a dribbler for the Steve Stokes tutorial on left stick dribbling, what filters would you put? For example, minimum 86 agility. And on that note, Tambu asks, can someone explain how, one, agility, balance, reactions, ball control, and dribbling affect players differently regarding the overall dribbling of the player? Steve, take us through it.
Good questions. The first question, I think my plan is to create a short video where I'll provide actual examples of players that I would consider as being good cards to use when you're trying to develop the skill of left stick dribbling properly. So rather than going into that here, that's something that I'll drop a bit later. The question regarding how agility, balance, reactions, ball control and dribbling affect the overall dribbling style of the player, I don't know, is the honest answer. You'd have to ask Tom Kalefi or one of the gameplay devs, because it's one of these things, it's part of the dark arts of FIFA. We don't really know exactly how most of the stats on the card really combine with each other. There are certainly, I mean, it's kind of anecdotal. We know from playing with cards how certain cards feel. So I think that through gameplay experience, really, the more you play the game, the more you get to understand whether a card's going to be, whether it's going to feel good on the ball or not. So many different things can play into it. The height and weight of a player has a massive effect on how they feel when they're dribbling. So, it's not just the stats. If you've got a tall, heavy player, the likes of Zlatan, I don't know, I've often talked about Yannick Bolasie, about how he feels skillful but awkward. Kaka is another good example. The tall players feel completely different to the shorter players with the lower centre of gravity. So it's very difficult really to give a succinct answer to that. Before we move on from... Sorry, I just want to add, Wise, just before we move on from meta as well, though, is another myth that I want to dispel. This one really gets under my skin. This is one of my pet hates, actually, and it's one of the main reasons why I hate the usage of the word meta. It's kind of passed into folklore that meta is an acronym that stands for most effective tactic available. And that is just not true. It's, first of all, if that was the case, then the word available is completely redundant. We would just call it the MET. It would be the most efficient tactic or the most effective tactic. It's a phrase that's been around for a long time. I think it came from actual sort of military strategizing, I think.
You're reading too much Sun Tzu.
You'd be amazed at what I read, Matt, and some of it isn't X-rated. So
nice.
So yeah, it's absolute bollocks that it's an abbreviation of most efficient tactic available. Is the point that I'm trying to make.
I might have trolled you with that just a tad. I'm sorry.
Maybe a little bit.
Way to ruffle those feathers, Hunter. But yeah, no, I'll pick up on Matt's question, or and how he's seamlessly integrated in with some of those the question from T-Man and Tambu. I'm with you. I think that you mentioned that no one really knows what agility, balance, reactions, ball control, and the dribbling stat do in conjunction with each other. And the FIFA, as FUT players, we've been crying out for a little while for them to give us better detailed descriptions about what stats do.
Absolutely.
They made some great headway with that when they showed us those shot charts. I don't know if you guys, if any of the people remember, but when people were complaining about in FIFA 19, I believe, those flick up and like the volley effectiveness, they finally showed us like, okay, this is what it used to look like, and where the ball trajectory was going. This is what it's like post patch. I wish they would give us in these and what do they call them, FIFA pitch notes. I wish they would give us a section, maybe at the beginning of next game or ASAP, really, like a 1 or 2 line description about what is agility in their mind, what is balance, and like what do they program? Like, okay, reaction is this how quickly a individual reacts when they lose the ball or when the ball's in the midfield, in a sense, when it's a certain distance from them. That is it only for 50-50 balls? Is it, and then balance, is it only how often you stay on your feet when you're under pressure from another attacker or defender? So these are, I really like to see those too, and I think that's the solution for that goal that I hope EA can bring to us eventually.
Can I give a shout out as well as far as pitch notes go?
Yeah.
This is something I was kind of half promised by one of the gameplay devs a while ago, but it's never materialised. When are we going to be told exactly how stamina affects a player's stats during the game, so that we can decide, we can have more information around making substitutions? There was some information released about it quite a while ago, but I was told by one of the devs that that's now out of date. And if I could have one pitch note, that would be it. What we need to know, how can we reasonably gauge whether or not we need to make a substitution when we have no real data on which to base the idea that a player may or may not be knackered? Does it affect their shooting accuracy? Does it? I mean, it obviously affects their pace and what have you. Again, we know that anecdotally, but there's a lot of sort of hidden stats where we've got no idea, and it's
right.
We need to know this sort of thing.
The same can be said for injuries as well.
Yeah, injuries are interesting, besides the fact that your guy just looks a little slower on the animation. And we had gotten some good information. I remember Nepenthes had led a charge about, EA, can you actually tell us what weak foot does? And then they did release some of that information, but I think that's changed though. No, if you I feel like that's changed from game to game, and they don't know if they've followed up on that, because they gave it to us for FIFA 20. It does feel a little bit different in FIFA 21. And so I'd still like for them to be a little bit more consistent with that. And that leads, I was going to finally pull in some strings together with Matt's question about attackers and what I'd prefer. I know that one of the Patreons, Jason M24, asked, like, would you rather have 5-star skills on a attacker or 5-star weak foot? And I think, people are always talking about the meta players like Neymar, or players like Son, or players like Ben Yedder, where they have these high weak foot, high skills. I personally prefer weak foot, and I don't even know if weak foot versus skills is a meta thing. That's totally a play style thing, and that's where back to Steve's point, it's a most effective tactic available doesn't seem right at all, because that can't be applied to a group. That can't be generalized in a sense. That's a individual player technique. Like, I prefer weak foot because I like to get in positions where I can shoot with either foot and hopefully be just as effective, and I don't usually necessarily use skills for that. Or that could be completely different than one of my really close friends who likes the skills because he likes to take players on the wing, and then he's good enough dribbler that he can get the ball onto his player's strong foot and not worry about it. So that's something I think you need to evaluate internally, Jason, personally. And then I prefer weak foot. That's
I'm with you on that wise. I've always leaned towards 5-star weak foot strikers being like the end game for me. Like, a really souped up version of Perisic has always been my favourite attacking card when we eventually receive it. I don't think we're going to get one this year because Inter are so terrible in the Champions League. So unless they do something to bail us out, we're not getting that card this year, which kind of leaves you with someone like Ben Yedder. In that case, you want a skillful player who's nimble and agile, but also has the 5-star weak foot. It's just deadly in the area. So if you get that half chance, you'll bury it. For me, that's where I'm working up towards. That's what I want to have in the latter stages of the game, definitely.
Yeah. What I'd add to that as well is that I don't think that pace can be entirely overlooked, even if you are playing a so-called drop-back rat. But it's not just pace overall. I think the important thing is acceleration. You need acceleration on a card.
Yeah, explosiveness is
to burst past the defenders. Because a sprint touch can just push the ball about 8 to 10 yards, and obviously that's enough space inside the 18-yard area, isn't it? So that's an important thing. But I do tend to agree that agility, dribbling, is incredibly important. However, there is a sort of caveat to that as well, that it's kind of situational as well. It depends what kind of play you're playing. If you're playing somebody who's playing with a very high defensive line, then obviously sprint speed comes into play as well. So it depends. It's good to have the options. I mean, it's good to have some sort of flexibility on the bench so that you can adjust according to whoever the hell it is you happen to have been matched up against, boys and girls.
And the one thing that I'll add just to end this discussion, and so we can move on, is all these stats that we're talking about: agility, balance, reactions, ball control, dribbling. They all revolve around composure. The one stat that I think often gets overlooked is composure, because composure plays on all of these. If a card has, let's say 95 across the board in all of these other categories, if his composure is 68, as soon as he gets pressured, if he becomes under duress and he can't find an outlet, his passing is nerfed, his direction of the pass is nerfed, the speed of it is nerfed. He doesn't move as well. He doesn't react as well. He doesn't respond to what you're telling him to do. So pay attention to composure when you're building your squads.
Quite tellingly as well, Hunter, it's one of only 2 stat categories that can't be boosted with a chemistry card. So I think EA I think EA know what they're doing with that, and I think that it's an absolutely massive factor.
You've also got to factor in as well, not just composure of the stat on the card, but the person who's actually playing the game.
Very true.
If they panic or rush into making a play and don't have the patience to move the ball around and wait for the AI to misposition a player or a player to take manual control when they shouldn't do, then you're just going to miss those opportunities more often than not. Composure in yourself is absolutely critical for when you're playing against really good defensive players. And
Generally speaking, Matt, sorry, the type of play you've just described there, that's the type of player who takes to Twitter and starts moaning about the defensive AI being overpowered with auto block. It's people who don't have the patience once they get in the area to actually create a decent goal scoring opportunity, so they just get bored and blast it into a defender.
I wish that long shots weren't so easily blockable as they are in this game, because I think that's an avenue to goal that is critically dumbed down in this game.
Finesses from long range flying, Matt.
Yeah, I mean like power shots. There's a lot of cards on informs in particular that get boosted long shots and shot power that are relatively ineffective because it's so difficult to get a shot off from range that isn't a finesse, for example, and that takes away some avenues to goal which would previously have been quite effective. But we adjust, we get around it, we move on.
The game will never be perfect.
Never.
Quite.
It'll never be perfect, and it'll always be random.
Unlike me.
Yeah, I was sitting here smiling when y'all were talking about that impatient player in the final third. Steve, you can probably understand why.
I can, having watched your stream last night, yes.
Yeah, so Steve, just to be really quick, Steve and I were in our private stream. It was something that I didn't notice I was doing, and he told me, he's like, look, we were in the chat or whatever. He said, look, make 15 passes. Do not do anything. Don't shoot before you complete 15. And he was counting my passes. I'm okay. All right. Well, before I knew it, I was dominating games and I was getting to like 22 passes, not even trying, just waiting for that person to make a mistake to pull somebody out. And it really does wonders if you just slow it down, keep the ball away, keep yourself between the defender and the ball, and you'll be surprised at how much space you can create that way.
When you're attacking, it's very important to be in control. I mean, you've got to be in control. You've got to be dictating play. You can't, if you're rushing, you're not in control. If you're panicking, you're not in control. So it's about taking your time and staying calm, really, and just looking for that opening.
Yeah, the only time you should be rushing it is in the last 10 minutes where you just have to go for broke, right? The rest of the game, you should take the time to pick someone apart as often as possible if they're good at defending or over-reliant on drop back, that kind of thing.
Very well. Well, I think it's time we move on from the meta discussion and we get into the segment that we're going to now call Buy, Bury, Borrow. So the borrow player is going to be one that you would like to have on a loan, play with your team for a little while, but not necessarily want to fork over the amount, or somebody you're not quite ready to commit to. For buy, you're going to have somebody that you would want to spend the coins on and have a part of your team for quite a while, somebody that you could use going forward. And the bury is somebody you're just wanting to discard, somebody that shouldn't be in this team of the week, somebody you just dislike for whatever reason, or if you just don't like them because they're so good, because that's what I like to do. We're going to do this all at one time. Each person will go through and give me all 3 of their picks. So, Wise, we'll start with you this week. Who from this team of the week will you be buying?
Yeah, no, that is so. By my long-term play here, I like that Thomas Delaney. I think that the reason I'd buy, we're getting to a point in team of the weeks where we've expressed this, that there's only a handful of players that could be useful for you given all these other power creeps and promos. But I think that Thomas Delaney would be excellent as a super sub. I'm trying to still figure out, I have that Europa League Atal, who's an excellent defensive-oriented sub later in your weekend league games and my competitive games. And I think Thomas Delaney could do that also incredibly well. He's got that low attacking, high defensive. I like him a lot for being a controller in my back. I'll cross the back line or in that lower third of my midfield. The player I'd like to borrow is the Callum Wilson. Why would I want to borrow that dude from Newcastle? Well, I think he's going to be really useful for objectives coming up. I'm sure they're going to give us a FUT Future star who is either in the Premier League or England oriented, and most likely as an objective. So I want to make sure I have someone there that I could just throw in and be competitive in the friendly scene, but not someone I need to keep for forever. But the Barry one is tough for me in that aspect. I think I'm gonna bury that Chiellini. High rated card for sure. Just at this point in the game, I don't think we could skirt by with his meta level of pace.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah.
Oh, there's always one. There's always one. Well said, though. I agree with who you'd be burying based on the same reasons. Steve.
Exactly what Wise just said. He's taken all 3 of the cards that I would have picked. Absolutely all 3. So I'll have to on the hoof.
Do you want us to come back to you?
No, I did. I mean, there's like Wise said, there's slim pickings really. I don't think any of these cards would get in either of my teams really, my main account or the Road to Glory account, and that's an indictment if they wouldn't get in the Road to Glory account. Maybe the one would be the one that I would... Which are we doing first? Buy, borrow or bury? Which one?
Yeah, who are you buying first?
Okay, well, I would have bought Delaney. I think that's the only really usable card there, to be quite honest with you. Maybe Souček, maybe Martinez. I'll go with Martinez. Martinez may be that kind of fox in the box striker, I think. That we were talking about earlier. He has a lot of those attributes. Certainly has the dribbling. Has the composure that we spoke about. Could do with a little bit more acceleration, but that can be sorted out with a chem card. And he's not bad in the air actually. He gets up there. I didn't realise this actually until I just pulled up his stats. He does have 93 jumping and 91 heading accuracy. I've always found him a nuisance in the air when I've played against him. So yep, I'll go with I will marry Lautaro.
Not marrying anybody.
Oh no, I will.
You just can't get away from it.
To be honest with you, I wanted to marry Patrick Bamford because he's just such a lovely bloke, and I know my mother would approve. But I'll. What the hell am I talking about at this point?
I don't know. It's okay. We'll steer you back to the we'll steer you back to the discussion. It's okay. I'm not going to indict you on the age.
I'm buying Martinez. That's right, isn't it?
Yes. That's
right.
What you said.
Right. We're good. I will borrow Patrick Bamford so that I can introduce him to my mum.
Nice.
And I will bury. I will bury Andre because he doesn't have a surname.
Fair. Very, very interesting picks there. I like it.
Quite
we did say
reasonable.
for whatever reason. Yeah.
Yep.
Very well. Glad that's over.
Me too.
Matt,
Yo.
who from the team of the week are you buying?
Okay, I was going to buy Delaney, but Wise smashed it out of the park with all the rationale for that one, so I will choose someone else. I'll go for Cancelo. I think that's a super solid card, a little bit expensive, but considering the price of someone like Trent Team of the Year, I think this card will be just as useful for a much, much lower price and a lot better linkability in terms of the number of good Portuguese cards that are popping up in the game at the moment, namely Bruno and Renato Sanchez, etc., etc. So I'll go with that one. To buy, to borrow, I'm going to give a second chance to Souček. His first inform was pretty awful, but I'm hopeful that he's become kind of usable with the upgrade to the second inform, and he's very much fits the map meta if you want to keep going down that road.
Rapid.
He's rapid for
Rapid
6'4"
for the
central defensive midfielder. And,
I think Delaney kind of fits the map meta as well, though, doesn't it? Because it sounds a lot like Fellaini.
Damn.
And he's got a bit of a throw.
Someone timestamp it. This is absolutely the latest we've had.
No, we got him in there, though. I don't think he's missed a podcast yet.
Isn't it funny how it's always you guys mentioning him and not me?
It is usually Steve, yeah. That's
True.
Anyway, and in terms of who I'm gonna, what's the last one? To bury. I'm gonna bury Mkhitaryan purely because it's a wasted card in the wide channels when there's a perfectly good central line and better rated headliner for only slightly more coin. It's a very good card in general, but not fit for purpose as a wide player. So that one's got to go by the headliner, much better and much better value for money.
Excellent.
You're so sensible.
Nicely done, sir. Yeah, I'm really glad you actually mentioned Cancelo. I was hoping somebody would, because that card, I mean, right now he's 300k, but next week he'll be down to, I don't know, 180 or so, or maybe even cheaper than that. But if you slap an engine on that card, he can really do damage in the midfield for you, or as a right mid. You know,
he's also quite a tall card, so if you were of the persuasion where you wanted to stick him at centre back, he'll play pretty good there, I would have thought.
Oof. Matt talking about the real
dirty.
Oh God,
real dirty.
Well, I did use that. I've used, because his previous inform was actually at right mid, and I brought him inside to when the 4-1-2-1-2 narrow was still viable as a center mid, and he was excellent. He was such a good player there. He's one of my favorite players, so I might try to give him a tryout too. That was a good point. Great.
Well, before we wrap up the podcast, I just wanted to make one thing clear. I wanted to give a shout out to Ferland Mendy for being a consistently great left back for me and so many others. And I know Wise didn't want to hear it, but we haven't made a podcast without mentioning Mendy yet, and I just had to squeeze that in there.
I thought he finally would have died. We have Davies.
I will never forget to mention Mendy. Well, anybody else have anything to add?
I certainly don't.
From me.
No.
Well, where can we find
Hunter
you on,
can't host anymore.
Hunter?
I think Hunter's done really well, actually. Apart from the obvious fuck up, and he's done pretty well.
Oh, yeah, the fuck up of mentioning.
You're allowed one good fuck up per episode.
Yeah.
I think you're okay.
Hunter, as a request for that, just put the crying MJ face on me for this last segment. Oh, God, it still hurts.
I will do that. I will do that just for you.
Is that still a thing?
For that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's still a thing. It's going to always be a thing, I think.
Devastating.
It's better with age.
How the foot
Unlike
coach.
Steve.
Unlike Steve. Okay.
Yeah. Well, Matt, where can people find you on the Twitterverse and anywhere else you'd like to be social?
Yeah, so it's at LamboMatt on Twitter with 1T. You'll find me camping out in any of the streams that the guys are running most nights at Mets Gaming, and the same on the Discord channel. So say hi sometime.
Always nice to see you in Steve's chat, and mine as well. We appreciate the support.
I wish I shared that sentiment.
Oh, yeah,
I'd break out in a
nightmare for Steve.
Yeah, I'd break out in a cold sweat whenever I see Mets Gamer appear in the chat.
With his pot noodle and vaporwave. Why? Where can we find you on the Twitterverse, my friend?
Yeah, no, mainly on Twitter. I'll throw some likes in every now and then. I'm not as active in actually tweeting stuff, but I'm always watching, as that person says in Monsters Inc. Um, and that is, yeah, truly, truly. And that is just Wise FIFA, and that's Wise with a Y. So, yeah.
All right. And last but not least, Steve.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at POTUS, POTUS, or you can catch me on Twitch, twitch.tv/the FUT Coach. And obviously there is the Patreon, which is patreon.com/FUT Academy.
All right. Well, you can find me on Twitter, _FUT_Hunter, and the exact same thing on Twitch. I don't stream Twitch as often as I should, but I'm going to try to get better at that. But with that being said, we appreciate everybody taking their time to listen and the continued support in the Patreon. We really appreciate all of you, and we continue to pump out more content for you guys. Give us some feedback. Let us know, what do you want to see? What do you want us to cover in the next podcast or video cast? And we will try to make that happen for you.
Absolutely.
But that's it for now. We'll check you guys later.
See you later, guys.
Peace.
See you, folks.